All right, you are welcome back. Want to continue from where we stopped. We were talking about the buttons, the radio buttons, the buttons for submitting, and other types of buttons. So when we go back to the our Visual Studio Code from where we stopped, we talked about the buttons. You can see we are talking about the radio buttons, but we noticed that when we click the button, everywhere was, it was clicking. So we needed to just make one selection at a time. So we added something like this, name select, to all our buttons. And when we added the name select to all our buttons, we were able to, achieve what we wanted to do. So let me show you what we eventually got when we added that name button. When you refresh, you save and you refresh, if you look at it, when you click on it, now one of them is being selected. One of them is being selected at a time. So I said it the other time, if you wanted to do something like like a quiz, you want to uh, display like a quiz where people can answer questions and things like that. You can use an ordered list coupled with a radio button, and then you achieve whatever you wanted to achieve. So another button that we also have, we call them check boxes. Check boxes. They are another type of input type, input type things that we use. So for example, if we look at, if we go back to our development area, our code area, we can add checkboxes. For example, let's go to the section here where we created our radio button, and let's label this radio button. Then we want to create a checkbox. You can then type input, then you put type. You also you type in checkbox. Let's give it a name. Let's say we can have several boxes, and people may want to select those boxes, so that they can do something. So most of the time when you look at you go to a website, you can see something like an agreement, you say I agree. So those type of things, they use checkboxes for them. So okay, so we can say I agree with the terms of this website, something like that. Then you save. You can go back to your browser and check what we have. So refresh. When you go back to, you can see this is your checkbox. This is your radio button. It says I agree with the terms of this website. So that is the use of that checkbox. There are some other things you can do with that checkbox to, to make it look a bit more fancy. Even your radio button, you can add some other things to it to make them look a bit more, a bit more fancy. So we are going to talk about using labels. We are going to talk about using labels. So we you can do it in different ways. You can do it in different ways. For example, one of the ways of doing it is, this is a label. Let me explain what a label is. This is a label. I agree with the terms of this website. This is a label. That label is showing what that text box is meant for. So because we just typed it in front of it, somebody may not know how it is tied to that text box. So to know how it is tied to that text box, we can use a label. So you can surround everything with a label, and then you just type label, you close it, and then you can copy this last part and then put it at the end here. So that is a label. You can save it, check your screen, your browser, and see how it's looking. Refresh it. You can see there's no difference. It's still there. But the difference is if you click on this label, it is selected. That is the difference, because you have attached a label to it. If you remove that label and you don't enclose it around that label, if I click on this thing, it will not work. It will not check it. I have to come here and click it. That is the difference when you put a label around the input box. Let me explain again. If you look at the radio button, click it, nothing happens. Nothing happens. You have to click inside this radio button. You click it, nothing happens. You have to click inside this radio button. But when we apply a label around it, where is it? Okay, this is it. So let's put a label around it. Label. Close your label. Copy the ending part. Put it in this place. Paste. Save your code environment, and then go and check it in the browser. Refresh. Now, let's click radio button without clicking inside here. Click here. You can see that it's selected now because we put a label around it. You understand? So that's another way of beautifying your website, such that when people click on the text, they can still get the effect of clicking inside of the radio button or the checkbox. So you can use the radio button or the checkbox for selection purposes. If you come here, if you click inside this one, nothing happens because we didn't use labels to surround them. You can still do another way. That's a little bit of a longer way to get things done. You can come to this one. You can come to this one. Then you can put a label around it, and then you give your radio button an ID. What I mean is, for example, you give it an ID of option 1, for example, option 1. That is the ID of your radio button. Then you can now put a label in front of it. You can put a label in front of it. Let's say label, and put your home inside that label. Put your home inside that label. Now, you now say 4. You can say 4, then you put the ID name. Put the ID name inside option 1. Let's save it. When we save it, you can When we save it and we run it, we run it, then you'll be able to check from the screen and see how it works. So let's check it out. Where is it now? Okay. So let's check our web page. You refresh it, refresh. Now click on home. You can see that it works now. So there are three ways we have approached it. We used the label around. We use the label around the what do you call it now? Around the input element. We used your label around the input element. This time around, we didn't use the label around it. We used it beside it. But what we did was we created something like an attribute called for in that label, and then we targeted the ID of the option. So we were able to now make the selection. So if you click here, nothing happens. But if you click here, something happens. But instead of you targeting inside of these radio buttons, you can just click the text and then you are good to go. So that is the difference. It makes life a bit more easier for the users of your website or for the users of your web page. So that is for labels. Then we are going to go into forms, but I just want to explain a little bit more about IDs. We have been using IDs and we really did not explain why we were putting IDs in some of our elements. For example, in our input element here, we used ID. Then when we go down to, is it down? Okay, in our sections, we used ID. In our sections, we used ID. In our input element here, we used ID. Where else did we use ID? I think that's all where we used ID. Now, the purpose of the ID is that when you give an element an ID, that means you have given that element an identification, such that when you want to use or you want to do something for that element, because it now has an ID, you can call the ID from somewhere else, anywhere else. You can call the ID from somewhere else on the same page, and the browser will be able to understand that, oh, you are looking for Mr. A, and then it will go straight to the owner of that ID and perform the function on that ID. So IDs are quite important. When you move into what we call JavaScript, IDs are very, very important in JavaScript. When we move into what we call styling, I talk about styling. Styling, when we use classes and things like that, IDs are also very important in styling. So you want to use a label with a for like this. We are going to be creating a form. When we create that form, most of the labels that we are going to be using are going to be using IDs, and they will be using for their labels. So the elements they'll be using IDs. That's what I mean. And then the labels attached to those elements will be using for. So it's easier for us to identify and use it in our code. So that's the purpose of using the ID. Let's create a new section and let's call the section contacts section. give it an ID of contact. Contacts. Okay, now we are going to create something we call a form. We're going to create something we call a form. For example, people come to your website and they want to register, for example, on your website. They want to register as a user on your website. They want to be a partaker, in your website. You're going to give them a form they can fill. When they fill the form, then they can, when they fill the form, then they can submit it, and you at the back end of the website, you can receive maybe an email from them that somebody has filled your form, and then you get something of that nature. So we're going to create a form. To create a form, I said to create any element, you must start with your less than sign. So you say form, and that is it. You have created a form. But the forms, you have some types of things inside it, So this takes us, we have already talked about input types, inputs. So we are still going to talk about input more inside the form, but before we go into input, this form has some attributes. This form has some attributes. We call one of the attributes method. Method. Now that method, what does it do? Method, it says that, do you want to submit a form, or do you want to get something from the form? So because people are filling your form, they will want to submit it. So this submission method is going to be a post action. It's going to be a post action. Sorry, it's supposed to be action and not method. Action. It's supposed to be action and not method. So they have to perform a post action. That is, they want to submit something. They want to submit the form on your website. So they are going to perform a post action. So we are going to put post, so that when they click on submit, it will post everything that they have filled, maybe their name, their address, whatever that they have filled. It will post it to the server or to an email or something like that. So for us to do that, we need to create fields where people can fill their credentials, name, and things like that. So we are going to create something that is called a field set. When I show you, you will understand what it does. A field set, and it what is that English word now? It encapsulates the name and where you are going to type the name, something like that. So let's create a field set. Field set. You close it, save. Now let's just preview and see what it gives us. So when you preview on your you refresh, and then you scroll down, you can see, look at our field set. It creates a box for us. It creates a box for us. Now, that is just the field set. Around that field set, there is a form, but the form is not visible. The form is not visible. You can make it visible when you start applying styles to it, but right now it is not visible. It is only the field set that is visible. If I right click on this field set and I say inspect, it will show you will see that the field set is what is highlighted. That is what is highlighted. It's showing you that that is what I selected. When I select the form, it's showing me that the form is selected, but it cannot show the form. You know, it cannot show the form, but the field set is selected. So let's go back. We can close this. Let's go back to our design page. Let's go back to our design page. All right. So now on the field set, we can create a label and a text box. Now we want to talk about text boxes. We have talked about labels. We have talked about input types. Part of that input type is the label. Sorry, the text box. The text box. Please mute your microphone. Please mute your microphone. So we'll talk about the text box or the text input. So when you have a field set, you have the text input. So I want to assure those who joined us that if you missed any part, just go to the YouTube link. You can get the playlist for this tutorial. So you can get the playlist from the part 1 that was done yesterday up till today. So don't worry, if you missed anything, just go to the playlist. You'll get all the things you need to get. So looking at the playlist, we can see there, we can now put we can now put the text box that we want to put, or the input that we want to put. But before that, there's something we call a legend. A legend. That the legend is like a description for our field set. So let's do it so that you understand it. Let's put a legend. A legend. Now inside our legend, you can put a description. Say enter your name. Enter your name. Or yeah, let's just say, or let's just say name. Let's just say name. Name. Save it. Then go to your browser. Have a look at what it gives you. Refresh. You can see name appears. Let's put some space between these items so that it doesn't confuse us. Let's put some space in between it so that you can see the differences. So in this our section, in this contact section, let's put a break. Put a break there to create space for us. Put another one. So you can save it. So that will create some space for us, you know, right there. So now we have created a legend. Now we want to put our text box. You know, we are going to follow this convention in putting our text box. We're going to follow that convention. So let's put a label. Then inside our label, let's put our input type, input element. Then the type will be text. Type will be text. And then we close it. That is our input type text. So when we save it, we can now go to our web page and preview it, refresh. Okay, so we created spaces here using our our break tag or break element. Now we said name, so the person can now put his name, something like that, like like Steven, something like that. So, but even though there's a legend that's showing us name, we want to put something inside the text box that will tell somebody like an instruction on what to do. So let's go back to our design page. So there's something we call placeholder. Placeholder. So let's put a placeholder. It's another attribute. Placeholder. In our placeholder, we can now say enter your name. Enter your name. We can still apply something in our label. We can still put name here, name, and then put full colon, something like that. Then you save, and then you go to your browser, you refresh. You can see it. We put a label there. We still use the legend, and then we put a placeholder there that says enter your name. So you can see that we are repeating too many things. We put a label, name, we still put an input with a placeholder, enter your name. So we don't really need what do you call it, this label. We don't really need this label, so we can just enter our name there, Timothy, just like that, without using that label at that place. So let's remove the text inside of the label. Let's remove the text. Really, it's not really important. You can as well remove the label that is surrounding it also, but depending on your design preference, then you can decide on what and what to do. So let's create 2 more field sets, and then we create a button, and then we call it a day for today. So let's copy this. We don't need to retype everything again. Copy it, and then paste. Copy it again, and then paste. So we want to we have created name, name, address. The type is text, and then you can put enter your address here. Then your phone number, phone. Now, if you want to do phone number or email or anything like that, let's say this is email, for example. Let's say this is email. If you want to do phone number or email or a date, you want to put a date, you want people to select a date or something of that nature. Instead of just typing it like that and using text, you can actually use attributes, type attributes that reference exactly what you need. For example, this can be email. The type is email. So if you type anything that is not email, it's going to complain. So because you have already set the type to email, so if you type anything inside that text box, excuse me, that is not an email, it's going to complain. So let's say enter your email. Let's put one more attribute, one more field set. So let's call it phone. And then There is something we call number, but we are not going to use that one. Let's just use phone. So you say enter your phone number. Okay. Then finally, we are going to put our button. You know, for our button, let's do we really need to use a field set? Not really, but let's use an input of type button of type, or input of type submit, rather input of type submit, and then the value will be submit, and then we can now close it. So that's the form that we have created. Let's check it out. Let's check it out. Let's check it out. Refresh. Now look at our form. So we created the name, enter your name, enter your address, enter your email and your phone number, and then you submit. So we have created a form for our customers to fill, and when they fill it, they can, you know, submit the form. Okay, so we let's one more thing before we go. One last thing before we go. For example, you can put your name here. Let's say Tim, your address 2456 Stephen Road. My email, let me just put Tim there, and then my phone number, let's say something like this, something of that nature. You know, if we are to submit, you can see, look at it. It says for email, please include an @ in the email address. Why is it bringing that message? It's because you have set it as email. The type is email. So if you don't put an @ in this email, it's not going to submit. You understand? So let's just say timotech@timotech.com. So the moment you do that, when you click on submit, then it will try to, it try to submit to a particular page. I made a mistake the other time. I think I need to correct myself. When we were setting the form attributes, the action, what I did first was actually correct, putting a method which is correct to post. That is very, very correct. The action there is for something else entirely. The action there is if you want to submit maybe to a backend. So that's where you specify the action. So our method is post. That is, we want to submit. The method can also be get. That is, you want to fetch something. So I'm sorry, I mixed that up. The action is different from the method. What I did initially was right. So the method is post, the action is where we submit it to. So for example, if you have a backend, maybe at a particular link, maybe you have a web API, that's advanced, a web API at a particular location, maybe at https api.timotech.com/submit, something like that. You have an API that you want to submit to. By the time you click on submit, it will look for this address and go and submit it at the back end. It will go and submit it at the back end where the API has been set. So that's for an advanced class. Probably, God willing, we can have that class. So the last part, which I want to talk about is an attribute that is called required. Required. When you put required on a form, it means that when somebody wants to submit that form, if he has not filled it, then the form will not submit. That is, it is required. It's going to bring an error to you that please submit, fill this form before you can submit the form. So let's put required on all our forms. You don't need to put equals to anything when you are putting required. All you need to do is just type required. When you do that, your form is good to go. So let's check it out. So we go back to our browser, refresh. Now let's try to submit without typing anything. Click submit. You can see it's telling me, please fill out this field. Let's fill it out. My name is Tim. Submit. The second one is complaining. Please fill out the address, 456 Stephen Road. Submit. Email. Yeah, we have to fill our email. timotech@timotech.com. Then your phone number, 456-789, like that. And then when you click on submit, remember our API, which is in the action, does not exist. If you try to look for it, but it cannot get it. So look at the address bar. It's showing https://api.timotech.com/submit. So that API does not exist. So that's why you are getting a blank page, like it's an error page. So we can go back to that. So that's for today in learning our web design. When we come back the next time, we are going to still look at some other parts. Then down the line, we are going to go into styling so that our page can look a bit more better. So thank you very much for joining us. You can subscribe to our page if you are watching on YouTube, to help us in bringing out things like this for the kids and for beginners. Thank you very much for joining us today. So we would like to call this session off. We will want to go back to, we would like to call this session off, and then we'll expect to see you at a later time where you can learn more about this. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a lovely time. See you. Good night.